The first thing I wanna quickly note is that if you guys have questions along the way, honestly, at any point in time, please feel free to put them in the chat feature, and I'll be happy to address them. Okay. All right. So my name, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Anthony Wyckoff, and I'm one of the directors and owners of Embrace Student Educational Services. This specific class, or this online class, is going to be geared towards the fundamentals as well as the key strategies that are going to be reviewed for the SAT exam. And I believe many of you are planning to take the SAT this upcoming December. And if you have individual questions, or think this course is going to be customized to you. So if you have individual questions, you're always more than welcome to reach out. Before we get started, a few quick notes and a few quick things to consider. The first is that I will post a daily agenda every day. I will post a daily agenda during each of our sessions. It will be provided not only within the Zoom link, but I will also send you guys updated homework so you have a chance to look at that. The agenda will be posted inside of the chat function, but also sent via email. You are always encouraged to take screenshots, and I definitely encourage you to do so. Even the PowerPoint that I have here, I'm going to be sending this to you so that way you guys have it along the way and can do additional practice problems. So, but you are more than welcome to take screenshots for anything you wish is going to benefit you. And if at a certain point in time, or certain instances, I'll even take screenshots, that way I can send it to you via email and you have a chance to work through those things. We will review a number of practice problems as well as key strategies. Today, we're going to be focusing on the SAT reading section. I will always save time for questions towards the end, about probably usually the last 5 to 15 minutes. But one thing I would definitely encourage you guys to do is not wait. I would absolutely encourage you to take advantage of the time. It's a small session when working with you guys. And you're more than welcome to reach out inside of the chat feature that Zoom makes available to you, and I will gladly answer questions along the way. Some of you take more advantage of this than others, so I would absolutely encourage you to do so, and I will answer your questions as we're going through. Now, the basics of the SAT, and something for you to understand, is that the SAT is composed of 2 sections, well, 2 major grades. It's actually composed of 4 sections, but it consists of a reading section, it consists of a writing a language section, it consists of a math non-calculator section, and a math calculator section. The essay is optional. However, many of our students do typically prepare to take the essay, which I will break down for you during one of the sessions as we're working through. Now, the SAT is based upon a 1,600-point grading scale, which is actually a percentile for how you score compared to other applicants or other participants in the test. It's out of a total of 800, as well as a total of reading and writing and language for 800 within math. So very simplistically, the total score that you can achieve is a 1,600. You want to do as best as possible, right? So that way you improve your chances not only for college admissions, but also at the same time you improve your chances for merit-based aid, because colleges, and I'll be as honest as possible, colleges will typically award merit-based aid, or what you like to refer to as scholarships, based upon your GPA, your course selection, as well as your test prep scores, so your SAT or your ACT. So that is the biggest need and sort of the benefit to you. Now, it will encompass an 800 for the math score, as well as an 800 the reading and writing and language score. I can go over super scoring in a later time, but in a very simplistic way, super scoring is just when you take the test multiple times and then you combine the best of your scores from various tests. So now, key question is, what does the reading section cover? What does the writing and language section cover? What does the math section cover, etc.? And the things you want to be aware of is that the reading section here is actually going to cover, it's only 65 minutes, 52 questions, which is what we're going to spend most of our time on today discussing. And this is going to cover primarily vocab, command of evidence-based questions, graphical analysis, main idea, inference questions, and adding, deleting, and rearranging sentences. So this is the key aspects, or the key types of questions regarding the reading section. The writing and language section is far more English-based, as well as like punctuation and mechanics and grammar. This will cover vocabulary once again, punctuation and grammar, transition statements, subject-verb agreement, interpreting graphs, supporting evidence, diction, as well as sentence arrangement. The math non-calculator section, as well as the math calculator section, will both cover the same types of math, and broadly speaking, it is Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Intro to Statistics, very, very basics of trig, data interpretation, Algebra 1, again, Geometry, Algebra 2, Intro to Trig. So, and as I mentioned, the essay is optional, but when we do review the essay, you will see that, so you'll be asked to analyze the provided argument and develop a written response according to the passage that they provide you. Today, we're going to be moving into your SAT reading section, but before we do so, I want to quickly note a number of additional resources that you'll have available to you, and I've already taken the liberty of sending you guys an email so you have this information, but one huge resource that I highly recommend for you to look into is the Khan Academy. I would even move forward and create an account so that way you guys can essentially level up. Khan Academy allows you to go to a level 4 in each discipline. They'll even track and monitor your progress in addition to a number of other practice problems. There are a number of must-know SAT and ACT formulas. You can get much of this information off of our various social media channels, including, yes, our very own TikTok, right? We have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have a number of other things, but I will even send these to you. So the must-know SAT and ACT formulas, that way you guys have them. There's an entire Embrace Tutoring YouTube channel that we feature, which will give detailed outlines regarding every single practice problem within the SAT College Board Blue Book. And yes, our very own TikTok will also have every single math problem. That way you guys can work through it at your own pace, okay? And they do a lot of like tips and tricks and strategies. That way you guys have not only just focused on the core content, but also have a really good understanding. Other key resources I might recommend for you following this course would be Barron's SAT Math Book, the College Panda Math, the SAT College Board Blue Book is what we're going to be working off of with respect to this course. The SAT Black Book is pretty good if you're looking for additional practice tests. And by far, probably one of my favorites is the Erica Meltzer Reading and English books. I would absolutely recommend for you to purchase if you're looking for additional prep, right? If you're looking for kind of additional supplemental materials. But realistically, in this course, we will be using Khan Academy, the must-know SAT and ACT formulas. I will assign YouTube videos for homework so that way you have a chance to watch them. And we will be using the College Board Blue Book primarily, as well as sample questions from the TikTok. Before I hop into the reading sections, I do want to quickly go over one unique thing, is that with respect to the SAT reading strategies, the biggest question we get all the time is whether or not you start with the questions or whether or not you start with the passage first. So what I'm going to do is I will send you these slides individually so that way you guys have them, but I'm also going to take the liberty of going to the passage first. I'm going to show you in real time what to do, and then I'll come back to these slides essentially as a summary. So you can see what I've done and you have it kind of in picture value, okay? Yeah. So we're going to be beginning with SAT Practice Test 1. I'm now going to slide down, right? And this is generally what the SAT looks like for those of you that have not yet taken the SAT, or perhaps you've taken the PSAT or something of that format. Now, the reading test is 65 minutes, 52 questions. It asks you to answer questions on multiple passages, but I'm going to sort of teach you the ins and outs of kind of what to expect and how to approach this. The thing is, the first passage you will always come to is generally the fiction passage. By fiction, I'm referring to the fact that it's going to be a story. It's going to be something to do with like a narration. My marker here is always, you want to go to the top part here. This top part is what we are going to refer to as your blurb. And the blurb, the idea of the blurb is to provide you with what is the main idea. What I'm trying to take out of the main idea is I'm trying to understand like what is the setting and really what is the title and what the story is going to be about. So in 2 seconds, right, what you want to do is you want to read this part here where it says the Strangeness of Beauty, 1999, by Lydia Minatoya. The setting is Japan in 1920. She and her daughter Naomi are members of the House of Fuji, a noble family. Now, what you want to take out of this, and by the way, if you've done this passage before, it's okay. What I want you to sort of try to understand is what is the general system of like, what is the rhythm of things of how you go about doing this. And I hope that even if you've done this passage before, you get a few tips right out of today, out of participating. So I hope you find it valuable. Now, what I always want to do is I want to understand kind of where the blurb is. I want to find the blurb. Then I want to go to this. Then I want to go to what is the setting. In this case, it says it's 1920. That's to provide you a context of really what they're referring to, or the year, kind of the context of the year and the culture. It says she and her daughter Naomi. These are giving you 2 characters, and then it says are members of the House of Fuji, a noble family. So this is the reason why they're giving you this, is to also provide more context. more context saying that this is a noble family or like rich or royalty. So those are the things that you want to associate with. Now what I want to do is I want to read the top a little bit. I want to read the middle somewhere, and then I want to read the very end of the passage. And what we call this, and if I'm going to make this easier for you guys, I'm going to choose a different color ink actually, so you guys can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I always want to start with my blurb. I then want to do a quick kind of like sandwich. And as I do my sandwich, right, so I do the blurb and then I'm going to do a sandwich. And the reason I'm doing the sandwich is so that way I can also continue to understand the main idea. I don't want to read the entire thing, right? I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I want to understand what the context is. So I'm going to zoom out here, okay? And I'm then going to look at what this is about. So here it says, and I'm going to read these lines. And as I'm reading the lines, I just want to pay attention to the diction. I want to pay attention to the words. I want to pay attention to the tone, right? The style. By the way, the tone is like the emotional appeal that the author creates. That's what we're referring to. So when I'm reading these things, I'm just paying attention to detail, tone, and style when I'm doing my sandwich method. And that's just to tell me what the main idea is. Like what's the overall idea without reading the entire passage. Here it says, Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? So Akira is a male, because here it says Chi and Naomi are both females. Chi and her daughter, Naomi, right? So Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, would she have been more receptive? One thing I want to note about this is that there's a lot of questions, right? There's a lot of rhetorical statements. So this is like more of a thought process more than anything else. So whatever's happening here is more of a thought process, right? He came on a winter's eve. He pounded on the door while a cold rain beat on the shuttered veranda. So at first, Chi thought him only the wind. The maid knew better. Okay, now I'm going to slide down because I'm trying to get the basics of what the passage is. It says, you know how children speak so earnestly, so hurriedly, so endearingly about things that have no importance in an adult's mind. That's how she viewed him as a child. I don't know who she is in this context, but that's okay. I'm just trying to figure out, I'm just trying to get the basics of the sandwich method of the overall passage. And now I'm going to go here, and then it says, I'm going to read the very bottom. Where did you meet such a fellow? Imagine he thinks he can marry the Fuji heir. Okay, so apparently this gentleman is there to marry the daughter, right, who is Naomi, and take her to America all in the snap of his fingers. Chi waited for Naomi's right laughter. Naomi was silent. She stood a full half-minute looking straight into Chi's eyes. Finally, she spoke. I met him at my literary meeting. Naomi turned to go back to the house, then stopped. Mother, yes, I mean to have him. So she does actually want to marry this man who I guess is coming in the middle of the night, right? Coming in the middle of the night. We don't know why. We don't know for what reasons. So here's what you want to do now, right? The whole idea of me doing that was just to understand what are the basics of what the passage is. Gentleman comes unexpected to a home to ask for a daughter's hand in marriage. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to recap this very quickly about what is this about, for what I know thus far, okay? So guy or gentleman comes to the home to ask for a daughter's hand in marriage unexpectedly. She obviously didn't know he was coming, and he comes, and right, here he is. So now what I want to do is I want to go to the questions, right? After I've done my blurb, after I've done my sandwich, now I want to go to the questions. And a word of advice, you will get good at this, but there's actually certain questions you can do before others, okay? The most popular questions that students typically do first are these questions here, which we will refer to as vocab questions or vocab in context questions. And my vocab in context questions stay here as used in line, and then they'll give you quotations of the word. It says most directly, most nearly means this. So what you want to do is these questions you can probably do first. The questions, and a huge word of advice that I will give you guys, the questions that you typically want to do last are actually your first questions. I know, which seem odd, because these are very broad. Okay, so this is going to be a broad question. This is also going to be a broad question. By broad, I mean it's about the entire passage. It's going to be something to do involving the entire passage. where you're going to need a lot of the passage in order to answer that question. And I'll give you an example. Broad questions say which choice describes what happens in the passage. So you're going to need the plot, right? This says which choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage. So this, they want to know, how does the passage evolve? I can't answer those questions right out of the gate. So a huge word of advice I would give you is to leave these for last. So that way, as you go and you're reading the rest of the passage, it makes it easier for you to gather that information where necessary and then essentially answer those questions. The ones you can almost always answer immediately are your vocab and context questions. And you're going to like this, if you kind of find this a little less intimidating, are the questions where they will say, which choice provides the best evidence to the previous question? So in something like this, you see here for number 5, it says, which choice provides the best evidence to the answer to the previous question? We refer to this as an evidence-based line question. So notice what I'm doing here. I'm drawing an arrow to go back. The reason why I'm drawing this arrow, and I hope you can see this, is because 5 is actually connected to 4, right? So this is where it was coming from. Another major tip that I will give you is that every time on the SAT, what you want to pay attention to, or sometimes when I have like various columns like this, right? Sometimes what the SAT will do is they will purposely have a question down here that will actually be linked to the next column, or they're slick and they even do it on the next page. Okay, so whenever you're taking the SAT, you want to pay attention to the fact that if the questions are conjoined, and conjoined, I'm referring to, do they come together as in a which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? And you like this, you're gonna like this, and I'm gonna tell you why. The reason why you like this as much as you do is because they're giving you hints of where to look for in the lines, right? To make it easy for you. With respect to the types of questions that we have, what we're on now is kind of the conjoining questions. So here, I'm gonna do a quick recap to make it easier for you guys. The first thing I do is I read the blurb as well as the sandwich method, and I better understand the main idea. Okay, quick recap. What I then do is I find the questions that I can target first. And the questions I typically can target first will include, I'm going to skip the beginning questions because they're typically going to be broad. I'm going to go to what are called my vocab and context questions because I can typically answer those first. And I'm going to go to my connection questions. My connection questions meaning, do I see this terminology here where it says which choice provides evidence for the best answer to the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? I also want to pay attention to this. Whenever my lines here are also going and they're sort of doing like a lump sum of information, just like what I see here, right? I'm doing like line 39 to line 73. There's 2 different ways to tackle these types of questions. The first is, do I read them each separately in terms of the lines, or do I read everything all together? You guys can see that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to answer question 3 first, and I'm going to show you exactly how I would think about it to make it easier for you. So for question 3, it says, as used in line 1 and line 65. So line 1 and line 65, what I want to do is I want to go and read lines like 1 through 4. And then for 65, I'm going to read lines, let's say, somewhere between 63 to 66, right? I'm always reading a little bit ahead or in the beginning and a little bit after to understand the context, right? I want to know how this word is being used. I want to quickly note as well that directly is the word that I'm paying attention to, okay? Now, this is called a vocab and context question, or what you refer to as a VIC. So you might see this in other books or other strategies or other materials, and they might refer to it as vocab and context. So here's what I'm now going to do. I'm going to go to lines 1 through 4. I'm going to read this, and I think I've actually already read it, but I'm going to read it again. And I'm going to pay attention to the word directly, and then I'm going to go to lines 66 or 63 through 66, and I'm also going to read this again. So here it says, Akira came directly. I'm going to circle the word. Breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? Would she have been more receptive? Now, what I want to quickly do is see if I can kind of summarize what this meaning is And if I'm really good at this, and whenever you have any sort of vocab and context question, what you want to do is remove this word. You want to try to remove this word and plug in your own word here. That's what you want to do. You want to come up with your own synonym. And if you can come up with your own synonym, then you'll better understand the tone as well as the context of what it is. So let's see if other words that we can sort of put in here based upon the rest of this statement. And then I'm going to go to the other sentence and I'm going to try to do the exact same thing, right? Or I can do them both at the same time, whatever's easiest for you. So it says, Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. So I would say in this case, this is like out of form, like out of character. That's something that I would label this. Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, so then this actually is referred to, had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between. So the go-between here is a hint, because this means that there's no, I would say, middleman, if you will, right? There's no one in between, right? So because of the fact that there's no go-between, right, he is approaching them directly. I think that's what that's referring to. Now I'm going to go down to the other statement, which was 63 through 66. I want to see if I can find similar language to sort of guide me for what's going to work best. And remember, guys, you're welcome to ask questions along the way in terms of the content. So here we have an understanding. Please also notice I'm starting here. I'm starting at the beginning of the sentence. I'm not just going right down to directly, okay? That's a rookie mistake. You want to read the sentence before so you can understand the flow of the passage and get information as you're answering questions. We have an understanding. Please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. So he is there to propose. And he says, I asked directly because the use of a go-between, once again, they mentioned the word go-between. Go-between takes much time. Either method comes down to the same thing, a matter of parental approval. If you give your consent, I become Naomi's Yoshi. We'll live in the house of Fuji. Without your consent, I must go to America to secure a new home for my bride. Now, notice a quick thing. They both mention the words go-between, right? They both state that. And they both mention parents, right? So the idea of what the word directly is referring to is stating that it's without parents, right? It's no middleman, no parental consent, right? That's necessarily, there's no parental approval that's following. So now what I want to do is I want to go into my answer choices. But before I do this, whenever I'm answering any question at all, here's a 5-step process that's going to help you. The first is I want to paraphrase what my question is, okay, of like what I'm actually looking for. Because of the fact that I'm referring to vocab and context in this case, what I actually want to do is I want to create my own synonyms, okay? So, or in this case, create your own synonyms of how you would use this. And now you want to plug this in to your answer choices. You want to find the synonym that's going to work best based upon your answer choice. So my synonym that I'm using is without parental approval, right? Because something where they are not directly involved in a matter of parental consent. So I'm going to go down to question 3. And it says, as used in line 1 and line 65, directly most nearly means this. Well, this says frankly. Well, frankly can be bold, but I guess like lacking tact, if you will. I don't necessarily know if that's the best answer. Confident, he probably is very confident given the fact that he's there unexpectedly to ask for hand in marriage. Without mediation makes the most sense so far, and then without precision. I think without mediation would be because mediation in this case would be parental approval. So me coming up with my own answer choice has helped to guide me to what's going to be easiest. So I'm gonna go with C. I don't know for sure until I read the rest of the passage and get the overall tone and style, but hopefully you can do this in a matter of seconds to kind of help navigate the process. But I think C is a strong answer choice. And I'm sure that as I'm reading through this, I'm going to look for other words to try to dignify, or I guess signify, if he is being frank, if he is being confident, or with precision, I don't think is the right context. You would usually use this in like analytical statements or measurements. So I don't think it's going to be deep. Notice what I did there. Every single time that you don't necessarily think one answer choice is better than another, you want to eliminate. You want to cross it off so that way you stay focused on the answer choices that you have remaining. I do think it's going to be C, but I'll answer that question after I read more text, actually, after I gather more evidence from the passage. Okay. Now, if I have my next question here is I'm going to do 4 and 5. And here's the reason why I'm going to do 4 and 5. I'm getting a lot of information all at once. That's the idea. So if I do 4 here, you're going to notice that as I go and get information for 4, right, I'm going to be able to read lines 33 through 72. So you see my idea? I'm purposely reading sections of the passage where I can gather a lot of information with a purpose or with a question in mind. And then I'm going to go back and to try to answer the other elements of the passage that make sense. Okay. So that way I can gather information using kind of a very targeted method. Okay. So now I'm going to go to 4. Now, whenever you have 2 questions that are together, okay, where it says, which reaction does Akira fear most? And let's see here, which reaction does Akira most fear from Chi? Okay, now I want to quickly remind myself, Akira is the gentleman that came, Chi is the mother, Naomi is the daughter, okay? Which reaction does Akira most fear from Chi? So this is what I want to think about. I want to think about paraphrasing things, and reaction means how Chi will respond to Akira, right? So which reaction does Akira most fear from Chi? So now I'm going to go down. I'm going to use these to guide me. I'm first going to use these, right, in my answer choices to go back and answer that question. I am not going to do this. I'm not going to answer 4, okay? I'm not going to answer 4 and try to look for 4 for A, B, then look for C, then look for D. I'm not going to try and do that. What I'm going to try to do instead is I'm going to cross these out initially, at least in my mind, right? Not, don't do it on actual test day. And I'm going to go down to 5, and I'm going to use these here with looking for evidence in mind of what does Akira most fear from Chi, okay? That's what I'm trying to find. Now, I'm going to go 33 and I'm going to read to line 72. So I'm going to, as I'm doing this, I'm going to circle things that make sense in terms of what I think he will most fear from Chi, okay? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to lines 33 through line 72. It's going to seem like it's a lot of reading because we're doing this for the first time, but here's the good news. If you master this strategy, and if you master these strategies just in general, the passages don't get harder, right? Like there are types of questions that get harder, but generally, for the most part, the passages are basically the same. So here, and I'm actually going to start here because there's dialogue, and that kind of catches my eye the most. And then this starts with a pronoun. I usually don't want to start with a pronoun because then I'll have to read back and understand more. So quick tip is I'm generally going to start with dialogue, and now I'm going to read all the way to line 72. Where did I get line 72 from? Well, that's a great question. I got this because of the fact that it tells me for this here, I'm going to go to line 71 through 72. So what's my intention? I'm reading lines 33 through 72. And what am I looking for? Just as a quick reminder, I'm looking for words that symbolize reaction, right? I think of words that are symbolizing a reaction that Akira most fears from Chi, okay? That's what I'm looking for. So this is help guiding me to do those things. Now, for those of you who are thinking to yourself, wow, why is he like going back and forth? This seems like such a scavenger hunt. It's because you don't want to just read all of the passage and then just go to the questions, or you don't want to just do the questions in a certain order and then go to the passage. Knowing how to do things in a strategic fashion actually makes the most of your time, and you definitely get the easier questions first, while at the same time gathering more textual evidence to get the later questions. That's what I'm teaching you how to do, is I'm teaching you a strategy of how you can get the easy ones while getting information to get the hard ones. wants, okay? Essentially speaking. Here, Madame said Akira, forgive my disruption, but I come with a matter of urgency. Notice he says here, forgive, and then come with a matter of urgency. His voice was soft, refined. He straightened and stole a deferential peek at her face. In the dim light, his eyes shone with sincerity. Well, okay, no. Why do you think I'm circling these words? I'm circling these words because they help to establish a tone. How is he treating her, right? He's sincere. His voice is refined. He immediately begins and says, please forgive, right? He's very polite. He's very respectful. It then says, come inside, get out of this nasty night. Surely your business can wait for a moment or two. I don't want to trouble you. Normally, I would approach you more properly, but I've received word of a position. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. I'm going to circle this, and here's a quick tip that I will give you, is that whenever you're in a passage and they mention something with a pronoun, whenever there's something like big, like a subject pronoun, then odds are that's going to be an essential detail that you want to pay attention to, because they're meant. So he's mentioning this specifically, and they're dropping the actual name of what it is. So odds are this is going to be involved in a question in some way. Okay. Now he comes, he's very polite. I'm just recapping. He comes, he's very polite. He's speaking with the mother. The mother has no idea why he's there, right? Come inside, get out of the nest. Surely your business can wait a moment or two. And he says, actually, it can't. I received word of a position. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. Congrats, she said with amusement. That is an opportunity, I'm sure, but how am I involved? So, question mark, mom has no idea who he is. Okay. Even noting Naomi's breathless reaction to the name card, which means this is signifying the fact that she has not spoken to her mother about him. Right? She had no idea. Akira's message, delivered like a formal speech, filled her with maternal amusement. You know how children speak so earnestly, so hurriedly, so endearingly about things that have no importance in an adult's mind. That's how she viewed him as a child. So this is how she is viewing Akira, because I believe this is how she is viewing Naomi. Yep. Yeah, so it is how she viewed Naomi, even though Naomi was 18 and training endlessly in the arts, needed to make a good marriage. She had no effort to find her husband. Akira blushed. Depending on your response, I may stay in Japan. I've come to ask for Naomi's hand. Ah, I see. So he's very polite. I've come to ask for Naomi's hand for marriage, right? That's why he's there for the proposal. Suddenly, Chi felt the dampness of the night. Does Naomi know anything of your ambitions? Also notice the ... is a hesitation. We have an understanding. Please don't judge that my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. Once again, very polite. He's there to ask for her daughter's hand in marriage. I asked directly because the use of a go-between takes much time. Either method comes down to the same thing, a matter of parental approval. If you give your consent, I become Naomi's Nagoshi, will live in the house of Fuji. Without your consent, I must go to America to secure a new home for my bride. Eager to make his point, he'd been looking her full in the face. Abruptly, his voice turned gentle. Right, I see I've startled you. My humble apologies. I'll take no more of your evening. My address is on my card. If you don't wish to contact me, I'll reapproach you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, good night. So he ends it in a very, I would say, respectful manner the entire way through. He is not rude. He's not abrupt. He's if anything, he's just very polite the entire time he's speaking with her. Obviously, he knows that he's caught her off guard, and he doesn't want to, right? Please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. He doesn't, I think he doesn't want her to interpret his direct nature as like, as being insincere, right? I think he just wants her to understand that there's a sense of urgency, and that's the reason why he's there in that fashion. Okay. That's what I'm gathering out of that information. So what I want to do is I want to try to first narrow down where did I like the best evidence, right? And hopefully you're doing this as you go through. And as you narrow down the best evidence, this is which reaction does Akira most fear from Chi? What you can do now in this instance, hopefully without getting sucked in, is maybe now take a look at your answer choices to help guide you, right? Maybe now take a look at your answer choices. This says she will consider his proposal inappropriate. Maybe. that actually would be a super fear of what he would have. And there's plenty of things in his evidence that would suggest that, including, sorry, let me slide back up, including this whole section here where he says, please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. I asked directly because the use of a go-between takes much time, right? So he's being polite. He doesn't want her to think that the proposal is insincere because it seems rushed. That's what he's trying to say. So as I go down, so A is a possible answer choice, right? I like A, but it depends on if the evidence matches. B says she will mistake his earnestness for immaturity. This maybe could be the case, but I don't think this fits with the main idea well enough, and I like A better because A will fit more towards the proposal, which, by the way, is the main idea. That's the reason why he's there. Earnestness for immaturity is maybe if you get sort of hooked on that where he was a child and she sort of thinks of him as a child, maybe if you think of that as a really good piece of evidence. She will consider his unscheduled visit an imposition. Perhaps this also is a possible answer choice, which, by the way, these two things are basically the same, right? She will consider his proposal inappropriate and she will consider his unscheduled visit an imposition. These are kind of the same because of the fact that he's there unannounced either way, but I think the better answer is still A. And I think the better answer is still A because it fits more to why, right? He's there to ask for the daughter's hand in marriage. So this is more along the lines of the why. She will underestimate the sincerity of his emotions. So I don't think it's necessarily his emotions. I think she's going to underestimate the sincerity of the proposal, which is why he's there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide back down to 5, and I'm going to see if I can line up the textual evidence the best way possible. And I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit because just in terms of general, you'd be doing a lot of this in your head and you'd be taking notes, right? But I'm basically walking you through everything that's going on in my head, right? As we're kind of like planning these things out. So this says, which choice best provides the evidence for the answer to the previous question? I would now go to the specific lines that I have. And I think I actually see, please don't judge so 63 to 64. So I'm going to go to 33 and I look at 33. And 33 says, his voice was soft, refining straight in his soul, differential peak at her face. It's not 33, okay, because that doesn't hit at anything. So I would do this, right? I would cross that off. I'm not going to go to 49 through 51, and you mine, so 49, 51. 49 says, you know how children speak so earnestly, so hurriedly, so endearingly about things they have no importance of in a child's mind. I think this is how she sees him, but I don't think this is what he fears. I think that's also important to note. I think she's joking because she still thinks of Naomi as a child, but I don't think this is how she views, I don't think this is how Akira worries of how Chi views him, right? So because this question is asking which reaction does Akira most fear from Chi, not necessarily, what does Chi think about Akira? It's not asking that. It's what reaction does Akira most fear from Chi? So it's his perspective. 63 says, please don't judge the candidacy by this proposal, which we've read a bunch of times, which I like a lot. I think 63 is a solid answer. 71 is, let's see here, eager to make his point, he'd been looking her full in the face. Abruptly, his voice turned gentle. I see I've startled you. My humble apologies. I'll take no more of your evening. Okay, so here's the thing. I think that because of the fact that it fits the main idea the best, I'm going to go with C here. And because I like C, and because it's talking about the proposal, right, that's the most direct piece of evidence, I'm actually going to slide back, and I'm going to go with A. I think 4 is going to be A, because she's going to consider the proposal inappropriate because he should have used a go-between. I think that's what he's worrying. It says, please don't judge my candidacy. Yeah, please don't judge my candidacy, which means direct, right? I'm being very direct and forward with you. Please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. Unseemliness meaning like out of character of this proposal. So that's what he's hoping, or that's what he is worried about the most. And that's also his direct dialogue. So I think that's the best piece of evidence. Okay, so now notice what we've done. I've read a lot of the passage, right? Only answering 3 questions, right? And yes, I know you're like, wow, he's only answered 3 questions. I feel like we could be moving so much faster. And yes, you would actually on test day, because here's what you would do: blurb, sandwich, 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 skip the broad questions, answer the vocab and context, and then go and read this information. All of that would have taken you realistically 30 seconds, right? And of actually going through, maybe 30 seconds to a minute. And then now you're targeted and you have specific things about the passage that you already know what to look for, right? So now let's go back. We could continue going on, right? 39 through 73, but instead what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the remaining questions, right? I'm gonna go in order now in terms of the questions, because 3 was C, I think. Anyway, I might need to come back to that. 4, I think, is going to be A. 5 is going to be C, right, for my answer choices. Now I'm going to go to 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Notice 9 and 10, once again, those are connection questions. So 6 says this: in the passage, Akira addresses Chi with this. So based off of enough of what I've read, and I can go back and look at more, I'm going to go and I'm going to find pieces of textual evidence that describe the way that he speaks to her. Okay, the way that he speaks to her, because it says he addresses Chi with this. So I'm looking for clues of how he talks to her. And hopefully you're not spending too much time on this question because you just paid attention to everything else that we just talked. His voice was soft and refined. He spoke with her with a sense of sincerity. He is very polite. He's buttoned up, straight down. He refers and he says, please forgive my disruption, right? My humble apologies. So he's very respectful. So I'm going to, that's probably the word that I'm going to lean on the most. And I think after skimming the answer choices, that's one thing that I saw. Yes. So in the passage, Akira addresses Chi with this: affection, but not genuine love; objectivity, but not complete impartiality; amusement, but not mocking disparagement; and respect, but not utter deference. Respect is by far the best answer, because he's respectful, but he's also not being utterly deferred to her. So respect is going to be the best answer. Okay, 7, the main purpose of the first paragraph. Now, what you want to think about for these types of questions, whenever you have a main purpose paragraph question, is what is the purpose of that paragraph as a whole? So this is actually also pretty broad, right? You want to know what is the main purpose to the entire passage. You want to know, and what you want to think about is, how does this fit in to the entire passage, right? How does this fit into the entire passage? So, all right, guys, let's go back real fast. Hopefully what you were paying attention to was, and I can read other elements of it to make it easier for you. Hopefully what you're paying attention to is that he comes unexpectedly. He meets the mother. He apologizes. He informs the mother that he's there because he's taking a job in America for Seattle's Japanese community. The mother thinks of him slightly as a child. Okay, notice I'm just summarizing as I go along. The mother doesn't think about her getting a husband. He then informs her the reason why he's there, and that he's there to ask for Naomi's hand in marriage. The mother still sort of doesn't understand. He eventually leaves, and Naomi finally does say, I met him here. We have a relationship. I do mean to have him, or I mean to be his wife. Okay. So that's essentially the story in a nutshell. If you ever need more clarification, now is the time where you would go back and you would speed read, right? Now is the time where you would skim as much as possible quickly if you needed to sort of fill in any gaps, right, as you're going through. Now, when I say skim, is you should have already read intently certain parts of the passage. So at this point in time, you should be able to kind of like gloss over it as if it's like a reminder, right? So you're not spending nearly as much time on it. And knowing that you're not going to be spending as much time on it, let's go to the purpose of the first paragraph, right? So we understand the entire passage. Now let's look at the first paragraph. First paragraph says this: Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form, had he asked the mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, would she have been more receptive? So the purpose of the first paragraph is to think, right? And the question is, who is thinking and what are they thinking about? And the first reason why I say think is because I'm noticing all of these rhetorical questions. Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, would she have been more receptive? Was that it? Had he followed form? All of these are rhetorical statements. The question that you need to think about is who is asking these statements and for what purpose, okay? So who is asking the statements? Hopefully you can sort of catch on that it's all Akira. Akira is the one that's asking all these statements. What's my hint? Nobody else was yet introduced in the story, right? Chi and Naomi don't come in until later. So all of this here is what is going on in Akira's mind. He's thinking to himself as he's walking over to their home unexpectedly in the rain to a mother he's never met, about to ask for the daughter's hand in marriage. So it's intimidating. And he is thinking, is he doing the right thing? Is he doing the right thing? So it's about who is you need to pay attention to think in terms of context. Akira is the who. What is he thinking about? He's thinking, is this going to be the right method in order to ask for the proposal, right? That's what he's trying to think. Is this the right method in order to ask for the proposal? So your answer choice should reflect that in some way. He is thinking about how they will, accept the proposal, perhaps, right? Something. But notice always what I'm doing. I'm constantly thinking of synonyms for my answer choices. I'm always coming up, and this is sort of a key word here that you want to take away. And I'm going to put it in red to sort of highlight is you want to develop your own answer, okay? So if you can develop your own answer and then you'll simply match it with synonyms based upon the tone and the context of the passage. Oh, my apologies. So what you want to do is you want to develop your own answer, right? Develop your own answer and match it with synonyms that they give you here. Okay, so now let's go. Describe a culture. Perhaps, like it's like indirectly describing a culture because it's saying that that's not the custom, right? That's not normal. Although that's not the purpose of the paragraph. The purpose of that paragraph is to let you in his mind. It's to like let you understand what he's going through at that time. So I don't necessarily know if that's the purpose, although it kind of does hint at the fact that he's not doing the right thing culturally. Just criticize the tradition. I don't think it uses any sort of like negative connotation, so you want to pay attention to the tone of the answers as well, right? Question a suggestion. I don't really know if it's a suggestion. Maybe the suggestion is the fact that he's breaking cultural form. And then this is analyze a reaction. Well, for this here, I think D works. And here's why I think D works. The analyzing is the question, right? That's what he's trying to do. He's thinking of their reaction. He's thinking of their response. And the reaction is going to be the proposal. I think he's trying to figure out, will they be more likely to say yes if I do it in this method? Okay. So once again, I think what he's trying to justify or thinking in his head is, are they more likely, is Chi or Naomi more likely to say yes? And by that matter, Chi, right, also with parental approval, are they more likely to respond in a positive manner, knowing that he is not doing what is typically, considered appropriate or typically considered traditional? So I think, and this is a tough question, because if you don't realize who is doing the thinking of that paragraph, who is asking the questions, then you might miss the overall idea. Right, you might miss but I think D is going to be your best answer for this one. All right, let's move on. So question 8 says, as used in line 2, for most nearly means this. Well, here we are. We have another vocab in context, or a VIC question. So what do I want to do? I want to go back to line 2, and in this case, I'm going to go to lines 1 through, let's say, 4, right, again. feel like we kind of keep reading the same lines over and over again, which is a nice thing, right? Because it means that they'll kind of blur all into each other, which will help you. So here I have, here came directly, breaking all tradition, was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to eliminate this word here, form, and I want to come up with my own words, So my words that I would typically choose are, had he followed tradition, right? That's probably what I would say, right? Breaking all tradition. Had he followed tradition? Had he followed culturally accepted customs, right? That's normally what I would, notice what you don't have to say one word. It doesn't have to be one word or even a sentence, or even sometimes when you have to paraphrase like sometimes when you have to paraphrase a short sentence, it doesn't necessarily need to be word for word, but what it does need to be is you need to be able to paraphrase the meaning behind it. So here, had he followed culturally accepted customs? That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm coming up with, right? And using my own synonyms. So now I'm going to go down to 8, and I'm going to look at my answer choice, which are culturally accepted customs, to their answer choices, which are appearance, custom, structure, and nature. So based upon these, I like nature the least, so I'm going to get rid of this, right? I think nature is just referring to as in general practice. Appearance, I think, is the idea of what others will perceive, like had he followed like perceptions, but I don't necessarily think that's the other best answer. Structure, I also think, is a little bit too literal. I think it's really referring to the forms, the customs, and the traditions of what they are saying. So I like B the best. Okay. Now, guys, hit me with a quick yes, just so for those of you that are obviously here, if this is helping you, right? If this is helping you break down the test, and like I said, I'll do a quick recap. Hit me with a quick yes inside of the chat feature, so that way I know that it's working for you. But I'm gonna do a quick recap for you, just so you understand kind of how approachable this test really is, right? When you understand what to do. The first thing is, obviously it's timed, but you need to know when to speed things up and when to slow them down in terms of reading. Read the blurb, do the sandwich, it will give you the main idea. Then skip the main questions in the beginning, because by now you should have enough information, but in the beginning you won't. Go and do the vocab and context questions, because those are generally the easiest. Pay attention to the synonyms that you're creating in the context within the passage. Then go and jump to the evidence questions, because these are the questions that are going to encourage you to research the most and read the most, so it will help you. And it's basically, you are forced to read, okay? And so when you're forced to read, that's when you're going to gather majority of the information that you're going to need. Then slide down and answer other questions in the order that you can. If you don't come across something that you know right off the top of your head, like say for instance, you come to a section or a question that you're unsure of, skip it, read more information, come back to that question, right? Because maybe you just don't have enough information yet to answer that question, and that's totally fine. Go and get all the other questions you can, and I promise you, as you're developing more context to the passage or more of an understanding, it will get easier. Now, hopefully, you will be able to answer this question right off the bat, because I think we've already answered it. Why does Akira say his meeting with Chi is a matter of urgency? Okay, now look, I would normally do what I normally do, which is I wouldn't read these here, okay? I would go down to my evidence-based questions, and this says which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question. I'm gonna now look at lines 39 through 72 through 73. However, hopefully you also remember this, I've already read those lines. I've already read them, and I already know where to look, because I'm an all-star and I circled the pronoun, right? I told you guys to circle before. So if you were annotating this, by the way, annotate means to take notes. It's your test, take notes, okay? If you were annotating this, hopefully you came across that and you remember, oh, the reason why it's a matter of urgency, right, in line 32, is because he received an unexpected, right, I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. So he received an unexpected job. That's the reason why he's there. So hopefully towards the end, the questions get easier simply because of the fact, like I said, you have more of an understanding of the passage, and it makes things so much smoother. Trust me, it does. Okay. And even so much, you're going to see how easy the broad questions are now that we've done majority of the passage. Okay. So this is going to be the matter of urgency, right? I believe it's normally community. Yep, that's 39 through 42. Sorry, I should have noted where I circled, right? Where it says normally I would approach you more properly, but I've received a word of a position. Quick tip that you guys always want to note, you want to note the lines, because that is what they're going to use in terms of the reference. So whenever you read something like in textual evidence, and you're like, oh, that's a really good piece of evidence, or I really like that word, or I really like how that stands out of the passage, even if you underline and circle it here, just do like a mental note of where those lines are in the position, because here's the reason why. When you go back to the actual answers, that is what they are going to do, right? So here's going to be 39 to 42. That's going to be my best answer. So I should have just quickly skimmed over and noticed what lines they are, and then said, okay, those are the lines that I'm looking for. And then when I go to my answer choices. So I like 39 to 42. Let's slide up to the answer choices. Hopefully I already know. Before I do this, I want to come up with my own answer choice as always, right? Come up with quick synonyms. And they may not say, let me do here. They may not say Seattle's Japanese community, okay? They're probably not gonna say he got a dental position. What they might say is that he has received like a job offer or an opportunity or some sort of, right? They're gonna label it in that way, right? They will not say things verbatim. And that's why I'm teaching you to think about things in terms of like a synonymous sense. You want to think of analogies and synonyms constantly. Analogies and synonyms. How would they paraphrase it? How would they describe it? How would they paraphrase it? So you constantly want to go back and forth, even in your mind, of what are other words they would use? What are other words they would use? This is the best piece of advice I can give you, okay? Why does Akira say his meeting with Chi is a matter of urgency? He has been offered an attractive job in another country. There, done, okay? So 9 and 10, done. 10 was B. We've already finished these for 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 and 10. So now let's slide up. Okay, now for the broad questions, here's my last piece of advice when doing these types of passages. Questions like broad answers, okay? This is broad. The reason I know this is broad is because it says what happens, or here's like developmental pattern. Other broad questions might include like theme, or what is the tone, what is the message. Like they're going to use words that encompass the entire passage. That's what broad is referring to. It's referring to the entire passage. So which choice best describes what happens in the passage? So now, don't be a rookie, okay? I don't want you to look at all the answer choices first. That's not what you should do. What you should do is develop your own answer choice, okay? So you tell me what happened in the passage, right? Develop your own answer choice first, then come up with your own synonyms, then use process of elimination, which we call POE, right, inside of looking for these answer choices. So step number 1, develop your own answer choice. Was he angry? No. Was he happy? I mean, kind of. He was there unexpectedly, and he was there for a marriage proposal, and he was very polite, okay? So that's what happens in the passage. Now, I'm going to go into my answer choices. One character argues with another character who intrudes on her own. He's not intruding. That's too much of a strong word. And he's not really arguing with her because he's there unexpectedly. One character received a surprising request from another character. This one could work because the surprising is unexpected, request is proposal, and these two characters are communicating with each other, right? Receives. One character reminisces about choices she has made over the years. Not so much. Reminisces is more about like nostalgia of like thinking of things past. I don't necessarily think it's C. D says one character criticizes another. So this is another criticism. I don't think it's she's being critical of it. I think it's just she's taken by surprise. B is by far your best answer. Here's also why B is your best answer, because it goes to the main idea. It goes to the main purpose of why he is there. And if I'm going to keep saying it, he's there for the marriage proposal. Okay. So request is the synonym for marriage proposal in this instance. So that is why B is going to be my best answer. All right. Now let's go down. Which choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage? So before I read these, well, I could skim the action words just to help me if I don't want to get sucked into them. And by sucked, I mean you don't want to try to do A, find A, do B, find B. You don't want to try to do that. Always, 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 you want to try to develop your own answer choice and make it really, really targeted. So it helps you guys the most. So here it says, which choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage? Well, he is speaking to the mother in a polite fashion, asking for a marriage proposal. That's primarily the gist of the passage. Okay, so here says a careful analysis. I don't know so much. A detailed depiction. Depiction could work because it's a story. A definitive response to a series of questions. I don't know if I would use the word definitive also. And response is more of like, this is like a Q&A, if this is sort of like an interrogation. A cheerful recounting of an amusing anecdote. Anecdote also is more being like a personal experience. A cheerful recounting is a memory. I don't think it's D, just like it wasn't something about reminisces. A definitive response, I don't think it's Q&A, although they are having dialogue, but it's not as if he's being, she's not being like inquisitive to it. A detailed depiction of a meaningful encounter. Well, the meaningful encounter is a proposal, and depiction would refer to story. So I do think B could work. A careful analysis of a traditional practice. I don't think they go into more detail regarding what was expected. Like they don't discuss what the parents would say, or if there's like a dowry, or right. They don't go into the analysis of what would be expected. So I think B is the best answer because it's the most broad, and it also is the one that doesn't essentially kind of counteract the rest. I mean, perhaps that's the best way of putting it, but B is the best answer because it's a story that is meaningful to all of the characters are involved, and it doesn't, these things aren't true, right? It doesn't do a cheerful and recounting, it doesn't have a series of questions, and it's not an analysis. So B is your best answer for number 2. All right, now I hope that made more sense to you, because realistically on test day, you would have somewhere between like 10 to 11 minutes of doing all this. So I'm gonna quickly recap. The blurb, the sandwich of getting the main idea, skip the broad questions in the beginning, go to the vocab and context, do the connection questions to gather as much evidence as you can, okay? And you can even do 4 and 5 and then 9 and 10 if you want. Like if you want to do them both together, that's fine if you want to gather as much evidence. Then go and do the other questions in that order. So 6, 7, 8, right? Read the rest, any other parts of the passage that you need to, and then save the broad questions for last. And by saving the broad questions for last, hopefully you've identified that it's something you want to fit into the theme, the tone, and really the message of which kind of falls really into the theme, the message of the overall passage, okay? If you do it that way, that is, I would say, 80% of majority of your passages, okay? All the passages. The only type of passage, the only type of question, to be fair, that we haven't talked about is called a graphing question, or something where you have to actually interpret a graph that's associated with it, okay? Which I will show you a quick example of now, so you guys just see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going now into SAT Math Practice Test 8. I'm gonna put this in your chat feature. And the only reason I'm choosing this is because it's a very good passage that's super wordy for a number of students, and it's just simply because of the fact that not many of you are studying nano metamaterials and metaparticles, right? Or nano world or nano wires, right? So I'm purposely choosing SAT Practice Test 8, so that way you become a little bit more familiar with the language that they're going to choose. Now, as always, what I would do for these passages, and I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit so you can see the type of question that I'm going in terms of the graph question. As always, I do the blurb. This passage is adapted from Rachel Ehrenberg's Salt Stretches in the Nano World by Society for Science and the Public. The nano world is the world observed on a scale 1/billionth that of the ordinary human experience. So this is what the passage is going to be about. I'm now going to do a quick sandwich of these things. Inflexible old salt becomes a softy in the nanoworld, stretching like taffy to more than twice its length. Researchers report the findings may lead to new approaches for making nanowires that could end up in solar cells or electronic circuits. So this is telling me why it's novel, or why we care, like application-wise. And this says stretching like taffy. Okay, so this is the behavior, and this here, the nanowires the world observed, and this salt stretches is my title. So notice that. So salt stretches is the title. They immediately refer to the behavior, and then they tell me why it's important. Okay. Now I'm gonna slide down a little bit just so I can read other parts. I usually always go somewhere in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And in terms of my sandwich method, there isn't a perfect science to it, right? In terms of like, where in the middle do you read? I'll tell you that I generally have a preference. I usually start with a topic sentence and I read a little bit more down. I don't go into the middle of the paragraph. I go to the topic sentence on purpose so I understand what is the topic of that paragraph. So here we have the initial attraction between the tip and the salt might be due to electrostatic forces, perhaps good old van der Waals interactions, okay? And then I see, and I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna read the last paragraph. It says, this may change our view of things, of what's happening at the nanoscale. The work also suggests new techniques. Once again, this is novel, right? New techniques for making nanowires, which are often created through nanoprinting techniques. Kempa says, we invoke the intuition of the macro world. He says, maybe instead of stamping nanowires, we should be pulling them. All right, now, obviously one thing's very clear. This is about nanowires, right? It's about the behavior of its stretching. They talk about the properties of it, like why it occurs. This looks as though it's like about the research, and then here looks like how we can use it, right? So how to use, or why we care, right? Like as a society. So that's what this passage is about. Notice what I did in like 5 seconds or less. Hopefully that's what you got out of it as well. I'm now going to go down, but I'm going to do this. I'm not going to answer these questions, right? Because for time purposes, I want to show you guys how to do a graphing question to make it easier for you. But what I would do if I was doing this, I would skip these questions. I would skip the broad question. I would skip the broad question, right? Overall structure, as well as the central idea. I would do these questions, which is a line question. I would do this question here. I would look for synonyms to surprised, right? And salt stretching. So I would find synonyms to those words. I would then go and I would do line number 25. Remember, here I have like a vocab and context question. So VIC because of the quotations, right? Whenever you have the quotations, just think vocab and context. And I would come up with my synonym. I would look back at my answer choices, right? Everything we've talked about stays the same, right? Which is the nice thing, like as you're breaking this down. 26, move forward, do the whole thing, right? And also, quick tip, notice, and I told you this, 28 and 29 are connected. So these are connection questions. And because here it says, based on the passage, which choice best describes the relationship between the salt behavior in the nano world and the macro world? But notice this, which choice provides the best evidence to the previous question? So just like what we did before, if we're doing this question, go lines 12 to 53 or 12 to like 54, and then come back and do this question, okay? I apologize if it seems I'm speed reading. The only reason I'm doing this is because I want to get to these questions here, which are questions we haven't yet covered yet, types of questions that is. And the type of question that I'm referring to is graphing questions, okay? So graphing questions. Now, you're gonna have two different types of graphing questions, and hang with me, because after this, you are done primarily all of the reading strategies that you're going to need, except for a few with respect to inference and a few with respect to paired passages. But if you feel like even in like an hour and 19 minutes, you like now have a strategy of how to approach the reading, then you are in a much better place for today, right? If you feel a lot more confident, because I don't want to underestimate it. The passages can be wordy, that can be hard. The vocab and the context and the tone can sometimes be difficult to interpret. However, doing it this way, I hope at least allots you more time to think about it so you don't feel as rushed. And more importantly, it gives you a chance to really target the types of questions that you're more likely going to be answered first and get more points, right? That's your overall goal. So with graph questions, according to the information in the graph, when the microscope tip is moving away from the solid surface and is 15 nanometers, one quick thing I want to note is I have different units. And what do I mean by units? Here they say 15 nanometers away. What is the approximate force on the microscope tip in micronewtons? So the reason why I'm labeling the reason essentially why I'm labeling the fact that they're giving me units is because I want to pay attention to my X and my Y axis or axes inside of my label or inside of my graph. So if I'm going to go back to my graph here, I do notice that I see, if I quickly look at my graphs, I see here's my X-axis, here's my Y-axis. I also quickly notice that I have the same increments here. Here's 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Notice these all follow the same increments, which makes it easier for me. I also noticed that 0, 0.51, 1.52, and these are the same, 0, 0.51, 1.5, and 2. Now, I like this because it's easier to interpret. I also want to pay attention to, well, I told you they gave you units, right? So here's your force in micronewtons, and here's your distance in nanometers. So sometimes they're giving you the unit to help you better understand what is the X and what is the Y on the graphs. And what they asked was, when moving away, sometimes if you get confused, just simply go back. They're asking when the microscope tip is moving away from the solid surface, what is it when it is at 15 nanometers, right? What is the force on the tip at 15? So this is just a simple kind of like plot. This is where I'm going to go. One major tip that I will give you, so you do not overthink this, okay, at this level, is it will be within a range. So my answer here is going to be somewhere within this range that they're giving me. And the range here is from 1 to 0.5. That's where my answer will fall. They will not try to overthink this. They're not going to try to stump you. And what I mean by that is they're not going to give you like 0.9 and 0.8. You will not have to determine the difference between it. You also don't have to be a hero and determine slope. It doesn't work that way, okay? So without overthinking it, really all you want to know and really what you want to do is you just want to find the range and you want to say, this is where it's going to fall. That's where my best answer choice is going to be. Let's go back to your graphing question. And I hope you guys see it's pretty straightforward. And I'm going to erase this. And remember, my answer was between 1 and 0.5, and there is only one answer choice that does that, which I said there would be, because they're not going to offer you two answer choices in the same range. Okay, just to be fair. So here I have C is 0.75, and this is going to be my best answer for according when I'm lining up my X and my Y and I'm labeling my coordinates. All right, let's go down to question 31. 31 says, based on the passage in the graph, which label on the graph indicates the point at which the salt nanowire breaks? This one's a little bit tougher, and here's the reason why, just to quickly bring you up to speed. The very first line of this makes the question tougher. It says, based on the passage and the graph, means that this part here is they are going to give you some sort of definition. They're going to give you some sort of relationship between them. I will tell you this, and to save some time, because we're running out of a little bit of time. Okay, hang in there. What the definition, and if you've read through this entire passage, and I believe I recall where it is, the definition is here. It says, when the tip was far away, there was no measured force, but within about 7 nanometers, very strong attraction rapidly developed between the diamond tip of the microscope and the salt. So the salt actually stretched out to the glom of the microscope tip. What you want to pay attention to is that when the tip is far away, there was no measured force. But when it got closer, right, when they're moving towards each other, that's when the measured force started to develop. So the question is asking you, where will it break? where will this attraction between the microscope tip break? It's going to break when they're moving away from each other, right? When they get far enough away from each other, that's where this attraction is going to break. And because it's when they're far from each other, I'm going to look at the points on the graph that purposely are the furthest, right? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the points on the graph. So here I have P, Q, R, S, and T. And this one says moving away, and T is the furthest along in terms of nanometers. So my answer is probably going to be T, right? Because it's moving away and it's T, right? And I'm moving away. So my answer is probably going to be T if T is a possible answer choice. But notice what I had to do. I had to understand where that was in the passage first, and then find that condition inside of the graph, which makes this question a little bit harder. And look, yes, my answer is going to be T then, because here I have P, Q, and R, and then here's T. Also, quick note, these are all moving towards, if you remember that from the graph. This one is the only one that's in the graph that's moving away. So this is definitely going to be your best answer choice then, because it's the only one it's separate from the others, because it's in the actual other, like technically the right desired graph. Okay, so here we are. Now, I am going to gladly send you guys the PowerPoints that I have with the strategies that are going to summarize this information. But so that you guys have a sort of a quick look, I'm going to do a quick recap for you. Now, one of the things we talked about first was always reading the blurb at the start of the passage. We wanted to annotate and read and skim the questions. One thing I will mention is do the sandwich effect. So matter of fact, I'm gonna change this up a bit on the fly. You're gonna do the sandwiching, right? Sandwiching to understand the main idea. Okay. So you're gonna read the blurb, you're gonna sandwich, you're gonna go and skim the questions and annotate them as best as possible. Leave the broad questions for last. Obviously, you understand why. Go and tackle the line questions. There are the command of evidence questions that are linked, and go and tackle the vocab and context questions. That will be the best use of your time first. If you ever have trouble, do I read the passage first or do I go to the questions? It's always going to be a combination of the two. So just always look for the details, the main idea, and use the lines as evidence of where to start. That's the one thing I will generally tell you to help you. Okay. Always annotate, always circle keywords that are going to be the best. Circle the action words within the questions, and then circle the meaning and the tone and the descriptive terms within the actual passage. And mark which questions are linked together, as I stated, the ones that's always come with, what is the best answer choice to the previous question. Always do those together. That way it makes it easier, and mark the lines in the passage that are going to be referenced. Super, super important slide. Definitely want to take a screenshot if you have a moment, but here's my thought process every single time I break down a question. Okay, every single time I paraphrase the question into key phrases, focusing on action words. I think of synonyms for those key phrases, how they're going to be described in the text. I try not to look at my multiple choices because I don't want to get too sucked in. The better I get at developing my own answer, the easier the test becomes. I want to read the evidence within the passage with those phrases in mind, with my synonyms in mind. I then will develop my own answer based upon the tone, the evidence, the detail, things of that, right? All the other things considered. And then I want to try to match my answer, right, and evaluate my answers to the answer that I developed, right? I'm going to evaluate the answer choices to the answer that I developed in terms of my tone and in terms of the evidence that I have. If you get really, really good at this, you will do very, very well. We've had a number of students with perfect or near perfect scores, even in the last year, and this is how they do it. Okay, and even if you're not looking for a perfect, okay, do your best. I'm here to help you in every step of the way. It's been a pleasure, right? But at the same time, don't hesitate to reach out. But even if you're not perfect, or really whatever your goal is, I hope that after this evening you found the section of the test a lot more approachable. Okay. One more time, my name is Mr. Anthony Wyckoff. On behalf of Embrace Tutoring and Educational Services, let me slide back here. That way, if you guys need to get in contact with me at any capacity, you're always more than welcome to reach out. I will drop my email in the chat feature one more time. That way, if for whatever reason you need to email me, or perhaps you have specific suggestions or questions that you would like covered, as always, feel free to reach out if you guys need anything. Okay, take care. Have a great night, and let me know if you guys need anything. All right? All right, bye, guys. Bye.